Welcome, everyone, to episode 92 of Dial the Gate. We're creeping towards 100. My name is David Reed. Thanks so much for joining us. Gary Jones, Chief Master Sergeant Walter Harriman, will be joining us today. But before we bring him in, if you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. And please consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops. And you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. This is key if you plan on watching live. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few days on the gateworld.net YouTube channels. As with most of our live programming, the moderators are standing by to take your messages in youtube.com/dialthegate. For Gary Jones, you can ask him anything. The moderators will get that over to me, and I will do my best to ask Gary. And, you know, it's always just absolutely a pleasure to have this gentleman on. He did some projects for us recently over the course of the last few months, fan episodes, and now I get to have him back. Mr. Gary Jones, welcome to the show, sir.
Woohoo!
Gary,
Yes.
how are you?
David, I'm good. I'm great. I'm always good. I'm
How
always
was
good.
it?
Like my mom, when I asked my mom, she's 86, in a wheelchair, can't walk anymore, spends a lot of time in the bed in the home. And I go, how are you, Mom? She goes, fantastic. And I go, really? And she goes, well, why not?
Yeah, why not indeed?
Why not? Like, why not have that choice instead of, and she said, because nobody else cares anyway. So it doesn't matter.
That's not true.
No, but you know what she's saying. She's saying, like, why not just be great?
Right.
That's what my mom's attitude is. So I try to adopt that. And it's gotten her through COVID.
Yeah.
She contracted COVID.
Wow.
And then once she got through that, she got pneumoniya. And she's
You're kidding.
going. She's still going. She's
Good
amazing.
for her. What a trooper.
Yeah.
Is she the one who you forced to sit down in front of a Zoom chat to say hello to everybody? Was she the one who wasn't going to do it?
Yes.
Remembering right? Okay.
Yeah. She was like, oh no, it's computers. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And then they just rolled her up to it to the desktop, and she was like, oh my God. You know, she couldn't get her head around it. Like my cousin from Wales was there, and she's like, where are you guys? Are you all together? And I'm like, no. Paul's in Wales, you know, so-and-so's in Toronto, you're in Toronto, and I'm in Vancouver. And she'd like, it was like
the marvels of technology.
Mind bending to her. Yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely
what would you
crazy.
like to know?
So, Gary, you spent what it was actually a day, an afternoon, talking with fans, but it turned out to be reams of content for Dial the Gate about their love of this franchise and what it has meant to them over the years. And you talked with people who have had struggles with depression or mental illness, you know, or found ways to use the show to help them grow with their family together, and sitting on odd couches, if I remember correctly, and ugly couches, and you know, just finding ways to use the show to connect with other people. What was that process like, doing those segments for the show?
It was just, I mean, I remember in the very, very early days of being invited to conventions that I just didn't understand it. I didn't buy into it mostly because I didn't believe in the very, very early days that fans even knew who I was. I just thought, no, I'm just a secondary character. I'm not a lead, you know. So, but when they invited me to a convention, and I kind of reluctantly, I thought, well, and went sort of reluctantly, kind of out of curiosity too, and then was hit with all these fans who absolutely knew who I was. And I had to really, there was a major period of adjustment, because I thought, oh, these are just, you know, like who are these people who are obsessed with this show, and like, why? And I didn't get it. And it took me a little while. when I got it, and I suddenly went, oh my God, this is an actual community. This is a community of people that are just lovely. And the more I got to stand at my table with my 8x10s, I mean, that's one thing, right? You go there because you're trying to sell your autograph.
Yeah, it's a passive income source. Yeah,
it's a passive income source, and you go because of that. But sometimes even that alone is not enough to keep you going, because if you're not into it, you can go, no, you know what? Because what it requires is a certain level of commitment, energy, curiosity, and sort of desire to meet the fans. And once I got to the point where I suddenly started finding the fans really interesting, then I kind of crossed over. Like for me, I kind of downplay what I do, because I go, well, I'm an actor and whatever. I just read my part and read my lines and whatever. But then when guys would come up to me, I remember one guy came up to me and he just looked like a guy who, like, he almost looked like a homeless guy. It was the best way I could describe it. Just like nothing
to him.
Striking about the guy, nothing to him. And he comes up to my table and, he's talking about the show. And then I said, what do you do? What's going on with you? And he said, oh, I'm retired now. And I was like, oh yeah, retired from what? And he goes, putting electrical systems in nuclear subs. And I was like,
someone's got to do it, right?
I was like, yeah, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
After that, like, it was those kinds of, I thought, oh my God, there is a mine of like information and interesting people. And then I just became, I just want to talk to the fans, because I just found them all. They all have stories. They're all interesting. And the common thread was Stargate.
Right.
That brought them to the conventions, that that's what it was. And I thought, okay, I'll talk about Stargate, but I need to know about you, because there's only so much I can talk about myself. I'm happy to talk about the show, but I just found that the Stargate fans were just fascinating and really, really, really lovely people. There's not anybody that I've met who was like, that I didn't like or were obnoxious or anything like that. They're super nice. And when you're in that sort of concentrated nuclear reactor of fandom, it's great. It's fantastic. And I've made friends, such as my friendship with you over the years. And I've met people who come back to the same conventions, and I know them by name. And it's just like really cool. It's just cool. So to be sitting on the couch and talking to people, I just want to know about their lives. I find them genuinely interesting. That's what it is for me. And that's me, but that's me personally. I can't speak for anybody else who might be put in the same position. That's just who I am,
I'm always continually surprised, and you think I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm 38. I've been watching this thing since I was 15 years old, 14, 15. Continually surprised at how, when I rewatch it, and I've rewatched the whole thing, all of SG1, probably 5-6 times. Not that many, considering what it is that I do, and I'm always finding something new in pretty much every single episode. Wow. There is a depth to the storytelling, to the characterization, to the quirks that all of you players had on screen, that continually reinvigorates it. And one of the things that Brad Wright and I talked about once, and it's one of the things that I believe his agent said, was that it's just evergreen. You can always find something about it to apply to your life. That's in many ways that a lot of other shows it's one note, and it's whatever note it is, it's a good one. But this one, I mean, there's a reason why on the forums you see people say, I've just finished SGU season 2. I'm now starting at the beginning at SG1 season 1. And they start over again.
Yeah. Yeah. and they bring their families into it, and they bring their kids into it, and they go, and kids grow up with watching their parents loving the show, and they go, well, if this is so great, I might as well just give it a shot. And then next thing you know, and then I have people coming to my table with like parents and children who, so it's like transcends generational lines, which is, it's like, come on, seriously, But, just to touch on something that you said just a moment ago, I think so much of it has to do with the writing. I mean, it's one thing to the chemistry between, say, RDA and Amanda and Chris and Michael, there's no way that you can have any control of that going into starting up a show. You have no idea. You don't know who's going to work, who's going to not, who's going to be the weird fourth wheel and not work, and you might have to replace or whatever. But the fact that those four worked out of the gate, the chemistry, is just icing on the cake to good writing, which you can control. You can't control the chemistry, but you can control the writing. And then you've got like Brad Wright, and who's iconic, and Robert Cooper, and all these writers, and Damian Kindler, and
Joe and Paul,
Joe and Paul, and Joe Malacci and Paul, and Paul Mooley, and it's like they were all fantastic writers, and Peter DeLuise, and
oh my gosh, Martin Wood, directed,
they were all, and something else happened from inside the sort of hierarchy and the structure of Stargate, which is that they would promote from within.
Right.
So what you end up getting is second ADs that move to first AD, that move to director, that move to producers.
Yeah, look at Andy Makita. I mean, he was there from day one.
I know. And Andy, I love Andy. He's the most. Andy is one of those guys that when he walks into the room, you go, "Oh, great, Andy's here." He's like that. I love Andy to bits. He's a great guy. I've had so many laughs on stage, and we became friends. We used to go to his house and visit him and his wife Candace and their kids, and just he's a great guy. And you can see it on set that it was the same crew. It was the same. Like, how could you not have, this incredible love infused throughout the entire show, love and respect, and that alone helps it become a well-oiled machine. So all those other things get taken care of, like the chemistry gets to sort of flourish, because they're not worried about like, oh, who's not getting along with who, or the director is not a great person, or there with that kind of promoting from within, you then get a shorthand.
Right.
Set. You get a shorthand. Everybody kind of knows, and people joke around. There's tons of joking around, and that's what made it a really great show to be on for me, anyway. Because I got spoiled. Oh my God! Because I wasn't a contracted player. I could still audition for other shows, and say I got a day or two on another show, I would walk onto that set, and I started to become really aware of the fact that I really didn't know anybody. I might know one or two people, or one or two crew members, or maybe another actor.
On another show?
On another show, like on some other like Outer Limits or something like that. Like if I got hired to act in something else, and I would show up, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know anybody,
right.
And then you just you're there just to kind of do your thing, and you got hired because you fit the part and whatever. But it was not like walking onto Stargate, because with Stargate, I would show up on the lot and I would know the guy at the security hut.
Right.
He'd come out and chat with me. Hey, how's it going? And like, oh, you know where you're going, just go park or whatever. So starting there, like that's where it became. And then not only that, like during shooting, if I shot a scene in the morning and then I wasn't due to shoot a scene till later in the afternoon, sometimes that happened, but it's not like I could go home. I was there for the day.
Correct.
I would just go up to the administrative offices and hang out. And I knew all the women working up there. And I could wander down the hall, pop in to see Peter DeLuise, who's working on something, and have a chat with him. And when else can you do that? It's like impossible. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't walk into, I'm just going to go check out the people, this, whatever, but I would just go and have a laugh with people, and they were all really welcoming. Everybody knew everybody. I don't know how else that would ever happen again, unless it was a show that was on for 10 years. And
to jump exactly off that point, you have a show that's on 10 years, the first one, 17 years for all of them. Andy Makita, as a case example, was one of the ones that I had on my show who, it wasn't, to say it was pulling teeth is not correct to get him on, but there is this lack of pretentiousness with all of you that a little bit of pretentiousness wouldn't hurt in terms of knowing that you guys, how much you guys are worth to us as fans. Because he was like, I'll be happy to come on your show and sit with you, David. I like you, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about for an hour. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And then we sit down and I bring up Heroes, or I bring up some of these other episodes. And he's like, oh, okay, well, so with Heroes, this is what we did. We did this and we did. It's like, Andy, don't you see what you just did? That's what I'm talking about. That's the magic in a bottle that you guys have. And he's like, oh, that's it? I'm like, yes, more please. Now let's go to another one, And it was only then that it was like, okay, now I get it. It's like, guys, you guys have stories to mine that all of us are craving,
I know, but that is part of it. It's they're doing their jobs really well, but they're not thinking, oh, this will translate at a convention,
right?
Just to be honest, after a while, I would.
You had to discover it for yourself.
Yeah, but I would say, like when I first started doing conventions, my background in comedy kicked in. So my background in improv comedy and some stand-up kicked in, and I thought, oh, well, what am I going to bring to the table at a convention? Because it's not like Michael Shanks can walk on stage and they can just applaud for 10 minutes. Right. And conceivably, Michael Shanks wouldn't have to do anything, to fill a hall. They just want to be there
to be with him,
to see him and be with him and be in the same room with him. But for me, I'm like, I got to make myself kind of useful around here. And how am I going to do that? So I just thought, just my natural kind of tendency to tell stories. I thought, well, there's been some pretty funny stuff that's happened on set that I see through my eyes. Like you could talk to somebody else that was in the same incident or in the same episode as me, and they wouldn't see it the same way. But my kind of view is always, where's the comedy here? Like, what is the hilarious thing that happened here that is my particular viewpoint?
Right.
And so once I started doing that, and the more I thought about it, the more I went, then there was that story. And then, I remember that happened. And I started collecting these stories so that when I finally, got kind of like up and running, at these conventions where I did more of them, I could be on stage and talk for an hour. I could talk straight for an hour. And then you throw in audience members asking questions, and it's like, for me, it's like manna from heaven. Then I can get to goof around with the audience, have fun with the audience, and just tell stories, and I'm in heaven.
It's only to a certain extent about your relationship with Stargate. They also want to get to know you. I mean, you shared a Mickey Rooney story once about getting a photo with Mickey Rooney that was just hilarious.
Yeah, but that's what I mean though. Yeah. Like honestly, another actor, given the same circumstance, could literally be traumatized by that. and just be like, oh my God, like Mickey Rooney tore a strip off me and he was horrible and blah, blah, blah. And it's just the viewpoint. It's like, what lens are you going to see this through? And I'm always looking for the funny lens, always. It's never like, even if a person's horrible, even if I work with an actor and you go, oh my God, that was a nightmare.
But that's
Then
life.
then the
And life is
nightmare
funny.
the nightmare becomes like, how much of a nightmare? Like,
Right?
oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
crazy. I have something that we're going to be. I want to prepare everyone for this in a little bit here. We had Garwin Sanford on November, December at this point, and he shared his collection of art with us. And one of the things that we've done today, the last time that Gary and I sat down together, he was showing off some of his paintings. And so one of the things that we're going to do in just a little bit here is show off some of his art much more with a greater focus to detail. I got it in advance, and we're going to go through it here. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about how the character, after we kind of settled on what his name friggin' was, had evolved from being just kind of a gate technician to more of an administrative assistant role within the base. And it's something that you could tell that, I mean, if you read between the lines, his relationship with General Hammond really cultivated this throughout the seasons, so that by the time that O'Neill takes over as general in season 8, O'Neill's like, okay, you're the guy. You're the guy to help me get through this, to prop me up and make me look good to all these people who are coming in thinking that, they're going to come in to meet someone serious, and they're not. At some point the paperwork has to get done, and you're going to help me do it.
Right.
That change in season 8 was fantastic for the character because it gave you more work and it gave you more to play in the episode, and you got to really sink your teeth into scenes with Richard Dean.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest, that dynamic had nothing to do with me in terms of how it was conceived. It was Richard Dean who said he wanted that. He basically said, okay, if I'm going to be the general and I'm going to be on the base, I want there to be, some stuff going on. And he just decided that that he said, it'd be great if I had a better relationship and a more interesting relationship with Walter.
He needed a radar, which is your namesake.
Yeah, but even that is a fluke, it just, and so, but you have to remember too, that by the time season 8 rolled around, I had already figured out, because they'd already given me kind of funny stuff to do before, little lines here and there, funny little moments or whatever. And I think as long as I had figured out what the tone of the comedy was, because that's my job also as a comedian. If you're in a funny show, you got to go, well, what is the tone of this? Is it slapstick? Is it sarcastic? Is it dry? Is it this? Is it that? And first of all, the first rule of comedy is you don't outshine the star.
Right.
So I knew that Richard Dean, they gave, in the scenes with him and I, they gave him funny lines, and I just had to just get what I could out of it without overplaying my hand, but also make him look good, but also be funny. And I figured out the tone of the comedy. And I think once I figured out the tone of the comedy, I think the writers, when they would watch it, would go, okay, we can give him more because he sort of knows what he's doing. So that's what a lot of that came from. So season 8, 9, and 10, I had like 3 years of just way more stuff than I would normally do. And like a lot of fun. And I'd find myself in scenes with Richard Dean and like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Like I was like, look at this stuff they're giving me to do. And it was just a joy. So as an actor and a comedian, I got to really practice that and kind of hone that. And I was really proud of that I'd figured that out. I was proud that I was able to do that because, I'll give you an example do you remember the episode that had Wallace Shawn in it?
Yes, I did. That was
Okay.
yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay. So
Ties that bind, I believe.
I don't know if you ever heard this story, and it's such a funny story to me, is that I got a call one day from a buddy of mine named Mike Roberts, who has since passed away. He was a
I'm
really
sorry.
funny guy. Yeah, he's a lovely guy, but he was really in fact, if you ever saw a show called The New Addams Family, um, you try and find it.
Okay.
The New Addams Family. And side note, Ellie Harvey plays Morticia, and Ellie Harvey played Novak,
Yes, she did.
the show where she got the hiccups,
Right.
right? And was drinking from a glass of water or whatever.
Damn
Right?
it, to hell.
That's that's Ellie Harvey, and she played Morticia. Mike Roberts played Uncle Fester. So
Oh, wow,
he
okay.
was this round little guy, and he was very funny. Anyway, one day he calls me up and he goes, Gary, you're not going to believe this. I got an audition for Stargate, and I was like, oh, great, Mike, that's awesome, because people who are close to me, they knew that I'd been on the show forever.
Right.
And so if they got everybody wanted to audition for Stargate and get on Stargate and do something on Stargate. And I was like, what is the part? He goes, oh, I'm auditioning for the part of this alien. And he says to me, I'm just asking you, what is, how should I play it? Like, it's kind of a funny part, right? It's got comedy in it. And how should I play it? And I just happened to realize that I was in that episode. It was upcoming, and I had the script. I couldn't believe it. I was like, Mike, I've got the script right here. Let me have a look. Swear to God. So I peel through it and I read what he's going to do. And it was quite funny. And I said, oh, Mike, you know what? This is the great thing about Stargate writing in terms of comedy. I go, you don't have to do anything. The writing is enough. You don't have to push it. You don't have to make a meal of it. I go, I can read it right here and I can tell that it's funny. You just need to be you and just do it, right? And he goes, oh, great. So he goes and does his audition, phones me back after, and he says, he goes, guess what? The audition went really well. He goes, thank you so much for your advice. I think I really knocked it out of the park. It was great. And I said, Mike, I can't wait to work with you. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't cast you. And so a couple of days go by. And of course, when they cast, this, like, the episode's coming up pretty fast. So they like to get their casting done quite quickly, right? So if you don't know, like, kind of like the day after, then it's like,
something's wrong.
What's going on? So he waited like 2 days and he hadn't heard. And so he calls me up and he says, he goes, do you know, I haven't heard anything. Like, I haven't heard anything. I said, well, Mike, sorry, but the production team doesn't usually call me to let me know who's cast and who's not been cast. I go, I don't get those calls. So I really can't tell. I don't know, for whatever reason, right? Okay. So he's like, oh, okay, I'll just wait here. Cut to, I walk on set. Right. And on that, and I didn't even know who was directing that episode at that point, but I walk on, and it's a guy named Will Waring. And Will seriously used to be the B camera operator.
Correct.
So, anybody who knows about filming, it's like they have the A camera who shoots all the stars, and the B camera who shoots like me. And the secondary stuff and the, stuff that they fit in later sometimes. But Will had worked his way up to be a director because he was beloved. Will is a fantastic guy. He's like, oh my God. And he's really good at what he does. So they went, okay, Will, you're going to have a shot at directing. And they gave him this episode. So I walk on, and I always would come on set, go into where they're shooting and just say hi and just check in and whatever. And I see Will, and I'm like, oh, Will, congratulations on shooting this. He goes, oh yeah, thanks a lot. He goes, hey, guess what? You know who we nailed for this episode as the alien? And I go, who? And he goes, Wallace Shawn. And I go, oh my God.
Right.
Oh, Wallace Shawn is the alien?
Right.
And he goes, yeah. And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh, a really good buddy of mine auditioned for that part, Mike Roberts. And he was wondering why he didn't get cast. And he goes, let me tell you something. Mike Roberts was fantastic.
Yeah.
He did such a good job. And I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, you want to know what happened? It's kind of a funny story. So Mike is auditioning for Joe and Paul because they were the ones in the casting, the casting thing. And there's Mike auditioning, and Joe writes on a piece of paper and slides it over to Paul, and it says, reminds me of Wallace Shawn.
Oh,
and he just slides it over to Paul, and Paul looks at Mike, and Paul writes on the piece of paper, gives it back to Joe, says, think we can get Wallace Shawn?
That's what happened.
They called Wallace Shawn's agent. Wallace Shawn was in a play in New York or something like that. He was in a play, and he was dark on like the Monday, like, dark days in a play means that
you're free.
You're free that day. They flew him up and filmed him in a day, and then flew him back, and oh my God, I could not. So I called Mike. I go, well, guess what? Guess what? You Wallace Shawn'd your way out of that audition. He's like, what? I go, you were so much like Wallace Shawn that they hired Wallace Shawn. He's like, what? I go, you idiot.
You inspired them to cast someone else. You were that good.
You were that good. You acted so much like you were so good and funny that you made them think of Wallace Shawn. So they just hired Wallace Shawn. And that's why you didn't get cast. And he was like,
I'm going to go jump off a building now.
No, he goes, well, I guess I can take solace in, that I acted well. But we just laughed our asses off. I mean,
how are you supposed to respond to that? What can you do?
That is the stuff as an actor you would never know in a million years, because they're not going to call you and go, you know what, Mike, call his agent, tell Mike he was fantastic, but he was so much like Wallace Shawn that we hired the actual Wallace Shawn. So Mike didn't get cast. You don't get that. So it was only through me being in the episode, him having called me, and otherwise I wouldn't have even had a clue. I would have just walked on set and gone, wow, Wallace Shawn's in this episode? Oh, that's cool. But because it was this my buddy Mike, who was hilarious, was I able to have fun with it.
And inspired them to go a different way without putting a penny in his pocket. The creative process is one that is it's an interesting one. Like in situations like this, I mean, what are you going to do? If you inspire them to go with someone else, I think that's probably a new one that I've ever heard, inspiring someone to say, you know what, you're so much like someone else. I want to go with that person because you made me think of them.
I know, it's the first time I've heard of it too. And I just killed myself laughing. It was so funny. And Mike and I had a really good laugh about it. To me, that's just the best story. That's the best story.
What was it like going from Richard Dean to Beau Bridges in season 9?
Well, in the very first episode that, I met him, right. And he was the first guy really, like even outside of Don Davis and Richard Dean, he pulled me aside and he said, okay, what is our relationship? How does this work? How does this work between me and you? And I was like, oh my God, here I am chatting with Beau Bridges about our relationship. It's kind of every actor's dream, but for him, it was like a no-brainer. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. He's not just looking at me as like, oh, the guy who opens the gate. He wants to know what our dynamic is.
Right.
So that was great. And then you take it from there, and then you see moments where he's trying to, use the phone, and I'm like, sir, you press that button, like you press the other button,
Right.
like, and he's like, okay, got it, and I'm just like, I know what he needs, kind of
I
thing.
like yelling at people. I never get the chance around here.
Yeah. But I do remember that on the first scene I ever had with Beau Bridges, he's standing behind me and he does one of those, open the iris, Walter, whatever. Some kind of command or whatever. And Peter DeLuise came up to me afterwards, like they shot the scene, and then he goes, okay, we're going to shoot it again. And he goes, okay, we're going to do this scene, but do all your lines as William Shatner. Do all your lines as Kirk. And he would make me do this all the time. Like all the crew got used to it, where I would go, oh my God, we've lost contact with the mouth. Sir, I don't know what's going on. And just doing my cheesy William Shatner, and just for Peter's amusement. So he says to me, when I'm in a scene with Beau Bridges, movie star, famous, iconic Beau Bridges, he goes, do it as Kirk. And I go, no, I'm not doing it as Kirk. He goes, do it as Kirk. And I go, Peter, it's Beau Bridges. I don't want to do Kirk. I'm tired of doing Kirk. You make me do Kirk all the time. He goes, do it as Kirk. And I go,
This is your director.
Yes, my director. Yeah. It's like, why don't we just waste everybody's time with to amuse Peter? Are we not entertained? So I go, okay, all right, I don't care. Fine. So we do it. So we do the scene again. Beau's like, oh, well, how come we're shooting this? Oh, lighting, some kind of lighting glitch or whatever. Oh, okay. So we do the scene again. And then I was like, oh my God, sir. And just going through all the things and doing my Kirk and
On camera, and the film's rolling.
It's film's rolling. It's totally rolling. Camera's looking straight at me. It's me on a close up, and they're looking at Beau too, and they're doing and I'm just full on Kirk. And then Peter just goes, and cut, and we end the scene, and the crew's like, they're so used to this now. The crew were used to two things. They were used to me saying Chevron 1 encoded all the way through to Chevron 7 locked. They'd be like, oh, here we go. And then the other one was Kirk, where they eventually go, oh, here we go. He's doing Kirk again. And as opposed to Kierkegaard. So when we finished that scene, Beau he was just standing there, like looking, like he was kind of going, what just happened? And I just got up and I just patted him on the shoulder. I said, welcome to SG1. And he just goes, got it.
Yeah, he had said pretty early on that he thought that it was going to be this more serious set, and he got understood pretty quickly that there was a certain amount of shenanigans that were just going to go on, and that he was just had to be along for the ride. Like, he had very little control over it. Everyone was going to have a good time, and he just had to get used to a little bit of a different pace in seasons 9 and 10 of a show.
Yeah, not just pace, but tone.
Right.
Tone was huge. Like, people just goofed around all the time.
And the work got done, but they had a good time doing it.
Oh, yeah. But that's the thing, though, because it was like, by that point, it was just like a completely well-oiled machine. So it wasn't like goofing around and slowing things down. It was like goofing around at, like you say, at the pace.
Right.
So they could have fun at the pace. The tone stayed the same. It was always lighthearted. Every problems were figured out on the fly. Nothing was like a big deal, except then you had Beau Bridges there, and he was great. He was great. Super nice guy, really, friendly. I could, chat with him, and, we all got our job done, but, do it as Kirk. Do it as Kirk. Do it as Shatner. Shatner, do your Shatner. It's like, no, I'm not doing it. And then that lasted like 15 seconds.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Well, what a run with that show. And then, you have scenes with Jason Momoa in Atlantis that are terrific, referencing back to the be working with Landry and everyone else, and visiting General, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or someone of that equivalency. And tell us what it was like, doing the exact same stats, but for Atlantis tape, and having scenes opposite Jason Momoa and that cast of characters.
Well, I mean, Jason Momoa was and is, like, in my experience, was just like a big kid. Like, he's huge, he's imposing, but he would, in between sets, he would like play ukulele, or he had like a little guitar. He just kind of noodle on his guitar, and like he just, and he was just really ultra friendly. Just like, but he looked, of course, like he could snap your neck with one hand. And when I found out that I was in that scene with him in the cafeteria eating fries and talking about bingo or whatever, again, all I could think of was like, oh, this is funny. I didn't think, oh, Jason Momoa, because only in retrospect, when I was recently putting together an acting demo reel, did I go, oh my God, I did a scene with Aquaman, just me.
Yeah.
So I just took I was able to take that and put that in my demo reel, because I thought, well, you know what? If you don't enjoy me, at least enjoy Jason Momoa.
Yeah, because he's the straight face in that.
He's a straight face. He just stares at me. He's like, this guy is beyond boring. And he's waiting for Joe to come in and give him some news, and then they just both take off, and I'm like, yeah, leave me going, yeah, it's a funny story. I'm a bit of a raconteur, you know what I mean? If I get you alone in the cafeteria, stand by.
Yeah, you better look out, man.
Better look out, because the stories are coming fast and furious. So I just had a really great time in that show, like whatever I did. And to be honest, that's the one main thing I can remember. I can't really remember anything else. You'd have to show me the clip so that I could go, oh yeah, right, that. Because with the Atlantis people, I didn't really know them. Right. I knew everybody else, but I've since I knew Paul McGillion from like a long time ago, and Paul and I are really, really good buddies. Paul and I are great when we both go to conventions, because we just both try to make each other laugh. And Paul's a sweetheart. He's very, very funny and quick and charming and hilarious. I love Paul. Paul, like, if you ever go on Twitter,
he's great people.
You'll see me and Paul kind of hacking on each other and, and making fun of each other. But man, we just like love each other. Paul's a great guy.
Go ahead.
So Paul was somebody that I kind of knew, but I didn't really do any scenes. I didn't really do any scenes with Paul,
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of crossover from Beckett to SGC after he went to Atlantis.
No. And the other guy that I got to know, but I didn't really do any scenes with, was Chuck Campbell.
Mm-hmm. The Chucknician.
The Chucknician. Chuck was the stand-in.
Yeah.
Chuck was a stand-in. That's what I mean about Stargate the franchise promoting from within. They knew Chuck was an actor. A lot of times you'll have regular actors doing stand-in work because
it's the work.
They need to work, and they haven't worked, so they're like, okay, well, I'll forego any auditions, and I'll sign up for this long-term gig where at least I know I've got a weekly paycheck, and I'm going to be part of this show, and I'm the stand-in, because you have a job to do, right? Well, of course, Stargate just promotes from within, and they make him a technician. So he became my equivalent on Atlantis. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of times, Chuck and I went to conventions together. And he is hilarious. Yeah. He's hilarious and great guy to hang out with. Oh, my God, he's from Newfoundland. And they've got like a real, it's the closest that Canada has to Ireland.
Right.
If you think of how funny Irish people are, Chuck's like of that ilk, and he's a great guy. I've just met so many fantastic people, and to hang out with them was just a real treat. I'm just a laugh. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have a big laugh going to the conventions, I probably wouldn't do them, or I wouldn't do as many as I had done, because I just knew that I was going to go and have a laugh. Especially when I found out who some of the other actors uh, who they booked were going to be. Like if I like for sure if I knew that Paul was going to be at a convention,
Mm-hmm.
I'd want to go to that
In a heartbeat.
in a heartbeat, because we have Paul and I have chemistry. But there's some the other actors. If I walk into the green room, it's really nice to see them, and they're really friendly and like, hey, how's it going? And we catch up and everything. But it's not the same as if you have that kind of chemistry, because I believe that at the end of the day, that's really what fans want to see. If you're going to put a couple of actors on stage, that's what they want to see on stage. They want to see actors just having a great time with each other. And the stories can come out, but man, if the fans walk away having laughed, that's like you've done your job. It's not just like, oh, I got to see so and so, and it was interesting, but more it was more technical than anything. But if they can be laughing their asses off, then we've done our jobs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You were kind enough to share some of your artwork the last time that you were here. And I went through some of the content with you then, and I'd like to go through it again now, if you do not mind.
Oh, that's really kind of you, David.
I've prepared some of these pieces in advance.
Yeah.
And one of the first ones that I would like to share, you did artwork. We were talking about this yesterday, and the first thing that you had done was you had indicated a 9/11 lawyer,
Yeah.
if I'm remembering correctly. So tell us about your background in drawing and how this comes to this guy.
Okay. So I have no background in drawing.
Okay.
That's just something that's innate in me, that I've always been able to do. Like, it just didn't mean anything to me. I've had people say to me, "Oh my God, if I could draw like you, I'd be drawing all the time." But unless it's a real drive to do that, and it just happens to be a part of your skill set, then for me, it just didn't really mean anything. And in looking back now, it feels like it kind of like I was able to draw since I was a small boy. And I remember moving to Canada from Wales, and then I was in grade 6, and we had an art class, and we had to draw a face, just and I drew this face, and I could just tell by what I'd drawn that it was good. And the teacher would come around looking at everybody and saying, "Oh, you might want to try this or try that." And he comes to my desk and he looks at what I've drawn and he goes, "Oh, okay, so obviously you've done this before." And that was the first time I was like, "Oh, it didn't occur to me. I just did what came naturally to me." Like if you put a pencil in my hand, it feels like, without getting too freaky doodle about it, it feels like in a past life I was an artist, and that the feel of a pencil in my hand is the most natural. Like it's like it becomes an extension of me. As soon as I got a pencil in my hand, like shading and just how it feels and the weight and the pressure, and like the feel of it is just the best. And a paintbrush too. So cut to years later, it's like it goes dormant and I don't do anything with it. And around about 7 years ago, I was at a sort of a New Year's Eve getaway up in a cabin with some friends, and I'd been told that there was not going to be any internet or anything like that. Movies would be on VCR or whatever. So I thought, oh, I'll take my sketch pad with me and just see if I do anything. And as usual with me, I just avoided it and just didn't do anything. And then on the day we were leaving, I thought, oh, maybe I'll just kind of peel off a sketch here. And I had a Vanity Fair magazine with me, and I was looking through it for something to draw, something to sketch. And I came across this article on this lawyer who worked on the 9/11 commission. and just kind of caught my eye. And there were two pictures of him, and one was he was looking at the camera, and the other one was from behind, and he was kind of looking out his window down to where where the World Trade Center had collapsed, and they were going to build the monument up. I think it's like the Freedom Monument, or I can't remember the name of it.
Denial of Memorial, yeah.
Yeah. So he was, and so it was kind of shot from behind him. So I just did these two little sketches of this guy, just to kind of amuse myself, and I did them in about an hour, and when one of the guys who was on this little New Year's Eve trip with me saw it, he goes, he was an artist as well, or was artistic, and he went home inspired by what I had drawn, and he contacted me. He said, "Hey, when I saw you do those little sketches, I went home and I drew something, and look at what I did." And he showed it to me, and from there I said, "Oh, hey, what, do you want to get together and draw on maybe this Thursday or whatever?" And he said, "Yeah." So he came over, we brought chips, beer, and we drew for a couple of hours and chatted. And since then we've done it for the only thing that stopped it was COVID. We've done it for six years, once a week he would come over to my place. And so everything that you're kind of about to show came from that. It was my working with him, hanging out with him. And we both did tons and tons of pencil sketches. And then it got to the point where I just said to him one day, "Hey, you know what? We've done a ton of pencil sketches. Why don't we try painting? Do you want to give painting a go?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." Neither of us knew how to paint, or we just didn't know. We just thought, well, we're feeling this kind of creative, artistic vibe. Why don't we what's the worst that can happen? We could just look like crap.
Wasted some paint.
Nobody's going to see it. And you just throw it away or whatever, or paint over the canvas or whatever. But I just said, you know what, let's give it a go. And he was all for it. So the next thing you know, he shows up at my place the following week with an easel. He bought an easel. I bought an easel. We bought canvases, and we both went out and bought paints. And next thing you know, boom, we're at it. We're painting. And so that is the context of all this art that you're about to show anybody. That's where it came from, is me and my buddy connecting. And
before I get to a couple of the paintings, I wanted to explore the drawing with Richard Dean Anderson first, because you did Rick.
I did.
Yeah. Tell us about. Was this drawn from a photo?
Yeah, it was drawn from a photo, and I thought that I would maybe draw something like this and bring it to conventions as something that I could offer and sell to the fans. So that's what I did.
Wow. What is it about the human face? You do a lot of faces. A lot of this artwork is a lot of faces. And I'm gonna pull up RDA's dog Andy here as well. What is it about the face and the eyes that you find so compelling? Because I mean, you look at a lot of computer game, video game avatars now, they look dead behind the eyes. They just look like they're not real at all. But these are so lifelike. You make them pop. You bring out their life.
What is it about? I don't know. I mean, it's just I look at something and I go, oh, I like the way the light lands on this part of the face, or there's something about the eyes that I want to try. And I got to tell you that I experience this pretty much every time I do a portrait. Is I'll do one eye, I'll get one eye right, in my opinion. And then I'm just scared to death to do the other eye, because I was like, oh, if I've done one eye right, the other eye has to be completely correct. You can't get one eye and then get the other eye and not have the other eye. And the eyes, if you get the eyes, you can sort of fudge the rest, or you can kind of make the rest work. But I'm telling you, if the eyes are not right, it just it just doesn't work. I don't know what else to, I don't know how else to describe it. They have to be correct.
The rest of it rings just false.
Yeah, well, because when people talk, they look into each other's eyes.
Right.
So if somebody's going to look at one of my drawings, they're going to look into the eyes of the drawing, and then they'll look at the rest of it, like we do as humans in human interaction. So that's kind of like that's kind of how it goes for me. And let me just turn that off.
Sure.
I'm turn my phone off right now for a sec. So
Oh, I lost him. I think he killed himself. He must have unplugged it. Hopefully he'll come back in here. Sorry, folks. These things happen every now and then. Let me see here. So let me pull up while I'm trying to get him here. Let me pull up some of his other artwork. Give me just a moment. So these are flowers that he's done. The benefits of doing a live show is it's completely unpredictable. There he comes. Just 1 second here. You there with me?
I'm here now.
Perfect. All
Sorry,
right,
David.
No, you're all right.
That might have had something to do with turning off my phone. I don't know.
That was strange.
That was really weird.
So,
it was very weird. Anyway, I'm back.
I just showed your flowers, your first go at doing some flowers, and now I have one of my favorites, Greta's legs.
Oh yeah.
The human form, and not only that, the sheets that you're doing on is crazy.
Right. Those. So what really captivated me on with that picture was the sheets, and I hadn't really done something like a separate part of the body. And so it really fascinated me to do something like that. And to be honest, when I first did those sheets, where you see there's all this sort of movement in the sheets, it wasn't like that when I first began. But I don't know I would think I was reading a book about one of my favorite painters named Lucien Freud. He's an incredible portrait artist, and he paints other things as well. But I just kept looking at the way that he would just sort of go at it and kind of attack his paintings with a brush. Listen, I'm just making it up as I go along, right?
Of course.
Like whatever, right? And the more I did it, the more I just kind of, I realized as I was doing it, how I was creating this movement. And one of my friends who's also a painter said that that's one of his favorite paintings because of the movement in it, because of how much it moves. And I tried to paint it in such a way that it's not fine art, it's not fine detail, but it's enough that you really get the sense of what it looks like with the shadows and the underneath of her foot and the arch and everything like that. So that's one of I love that painting.
I love it too. I have one of you that you did in Florence, Italy, outside of a shop, it looks like. I love the color in this and the age.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing about, I was on holidays with my family years ago. I have two pictures of that same shot this is from a photograph that I took. The one is the old man is there by himself. And then in the next one, my son is standing in front of those big doors. But, when I was doing it, I was like, I'm not going to take on drawing my son, because if I don't get it right, it's not going to look good. So I decided to just do the one that didn't have my son in it. And also as a just a backdrop to that shop, in the actual photo, that shop is just, it's like a bomb went off in that shop with the stuff that's in the windows. And it's just, I don't know what kind of store that was or what that guy was selling, but there were like tons and tons of books and in the actual photo. And I left those out. I chose to leave those out because I wanted to have this guy just sitting in front of an empty doorway. So I drew it. So I painted in all the shelves, and then I painted the guy. So everything is exactly the same. And but I got to tell you, in Florence, a lot of those buildings in the narrow streets, they're made of brick and plaster, right? So over time, a lot of the plaster that is on the facade of the bricks just wears away and falls off. Okay, so what do? They just go replaster it. They don't paint it. They just show up with a bunch of plaster and they plaster,
and
that's it. And then they go, well, it's plastered now. There's no exposed brick. So if you look at the wall, the section of the wall that looks kind of like almost like burnt and dark, that's just age and kind of like, that's just the part that hasn't fallen off, you know. And if you look at the sections that look kind of cleaner and whiter, that's the part that got replastered in real life. And I was trying to figure out how I could recreate that in the painting. And so I thought, oh, well, I've got a little mixing trowel of my own that I would mix my paints with. So that's what I started painting with. The other stuff I painted with a fine brush. But for the wall, it was like I was troweling on plaster. So I would just scoop up white and I'd trowel it on. And I'd scoop and I'd mix a bit of gray in and I'd trowel it on. And I created that look of like, how can I really recreate the troweling plaster effect? And I did it with my own trowel, painting trowel, mixing trowel.
Yeah,
and
you approached it the same way, and it resulted in the same kind of effect.
Same way, and I got the same effect, and I was really happy with that.
Just crazy.
Yeah, thanks.
I have so some Arnold Newman photography that was done here. You have the first one that I have up. You had a book of his called One Mind's Eye. This gentleman here with the bald head and the big nose. Just distinct features.
Yeah. Well, these were just, he's my favorite portrait, black and white portrait artist, Arnold Newman. And I love that book. It's full of, he was one of those guys back in the 60s, lived in New York, and he photographed everybody. He photographed Picasso, Marilyn Monroe, you know, just all these artists, Jean Miro, like all these artists and writers and authors and poets and sculptors. They're all in this book. The One Mind's Eye is like an amazing book if you can get your hands on it. I think you can order it through Amazon, but it's like not in print anymore. You got to kind of hunt it down. I lost that book originally, and my girlfriend found it for me and got it for me one Christmas. I was just like beside myself, and it's here with me now. He was one of those guys that would have, you can imagine, he would have dinner parties with the people that would show up to his dinner parties. He'd be like, oh yeah, Picasso's coming over with, you know,
Jeez, man.
And he would have like, you know, all these like famous actors and people but what I loved about him was that he would contextualize his portraits. He would take these people and he would put them in a setting that supported what they did. You just got to kind of see the book to know what I'm talking about. There's one very, very famous portrait that he did of Igor Stravinsky, where he's kind of leaning like this against a grand piano and the lid of the grand piano is up. You can't miss it. That's Arnold Newman. And and it's all about composition. And I love composition. I mean, the things that you're showing right now are just, there's less composition because they're just straight portraits. But I also take photographs too, and I'm also a photographer as well. So I love composition, and how things are, the weight of something, like how it's weighted. But more for these pencil sketches, it was more that I just loved the way the light caught their eyes and it caught their faces, and I just wanted to try and see if I could draw that. So,
rapper Mac Miller, I have him up now.
Mac Miller, he was part of three rappers that I drew for my son. My son was really into rap music. And he said, "Oh, do you think you could ever draw me like a rap artist?" And I said, "Well, send me the picture. I'll see what I can do." And there's two others that I drew that I'm pretty happy with.
The pirate one with the braiding on the uniform. That's really cool.
I forget that guy's name. And then the other guy who's got he's got big dreads. And what caught my eye about that was that he's top lit. So there's like light shining down. So it almost like his hair kind of disappears into it's covered with light.
Yes.
And that really caught my eye, so I wanted to draw that. So I'm really happy with those three drawings that I did for my son. He loved them. I gave them to him, and he was pretty happy with that.
They're beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah, and they were just exercises for me. They were like, "Oh, can I draw these people?" Like, how can I draw, can I draw a person of color that I haven't done before? Like, how do you do that with skin tone as opposed to drawing like a Caucasian person? So it became like a study for me. As how do I do that? Like, what have I got to do to make it look like that and to make it just right? So that was really great.
I have your grandmother up, which oddly enough, actually, in hindsight, reminds me a lot of my grandmother. Old German lady.
The thing I loved about that photograph, oh my God, because I'd never really seen my grandmother wear those glasses, which look like she stole them from like Michael Caine back in the 60s. And she's smoking a cigarette, which I knew she smoked. But that picture, when I came across that picture, I was like, my grandmother looks like she ran a London crime syndicate. That's what I thought of when I saw that, like the toughest old broad with these Michael Caine square glasses and a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. And I was like, well, I have to draw this, so it was a study in something.
Right.
And I also love too that when we talked earlier about like the eyes have to be perfect. Well, her eyes are obscured by reflections. And I was like, that's interesting. How am I going to do that? So what I actually did was I drew what I thought were her eyes, and then I erased them out.
Correct. It doesn't look like there's something wrong with her eyes. It really does look like, as far as I'm looking at it, it looks like you've captured a reflection on the lenses. Yeah. So that was achieved.
Yeah.
I also have a self-portrait, not the one from your son's photos, but a self-portrait of you kind of looking off to the left.
Yeah.
Here.
That photo,
I thought it was your dad originally, and then you're like, no, it's me.
No, that if you look at that photo, it kind of looks like me, but everybody who saw that said, wow, it sort of looks like you, but you look incredibly sad. And I said, yeah, I was going through a really, really, sad period in my life. I was getting divorced, and I was having a really tough time, but I was still, being artistic and being creative. And this person, a friend of mine who was a photographer, took some photographs of me, and I saw that one, and I thought, well, I'm going to try and draw it. And so there's a heaviness and a kind of a sadness to that that I hope I captured. But that's what I think of when I see that particular picture.
I have a profile of you that your son took and that you drew.
Yes.
Pull this up here.
So that one, he just took a photo of me from the side. We were driving. We had stopped at a stoplight or something, and I just remember I was thinking about something and I have my hands like this. And then when I saw the photo later, what caught my eye were my own hands. And hands are hard to draw. Like if you show, I guess you haven't shown that picture of Richard Dean yet.
I already did show Richard Dean. I can go
Oh,
back
you
to
did.
it.
So for me, the hands it was really important that I get the hands right, because if the hands don't look good, so you spend time on that, and for that, it was like this idea of what do my own hands look like? So that was the challenge in that drawing that I quite liked. I like that photo.
I have, let me see here. Pull this up. An Irish fisherman. I love this. That you want to talk about a face that has years earned and hard lived on it. This Irish fisherman with his hat and everything else is just so well done.
Yeah. Well, if you look closely at that, because it's not even up in front of me, right? Like you're just the way we're doing the Zoom, I'm just remembering the actual drawing. That picture, what caught my eye on that picture was his lip looks like it's been sliced, and kind of, I thought this guy's had some kind of fishing accident. He got a hook in his mouth, or I don't know, God knows what. Something happened to this guy's mouth, and it looks like his lip was slit open and then sewn back together. And of course, years later, it's still, like a bad stitching job. And years later, that's what he looks like. Again, whenever I come across these photographs, there's always something in the photograph that has to kind of bring me to it and go, oh, that's interesting, And so the other thing that I hadn't done before in a lot of other sketches of older folks, especially, was that he had kind of like liver spots on his face.
Yes.
And so I noticed that, and when I started adding those, I couldn't believe what it actually did to the sketch and how it really brought out his age, and just the fact that drawing somebody who's older is just more interesting because of the lines and the crags and the shadows and where the light captures and where the darkness sits. They're just more interesting. So for me to draw him was a real challenge. And his eyes are hooded, and he just looks like he'd be a guy that you'd see at the local and would not be putting up with any guff, and he's lived quite a life,
I agree. I have Ansel Adams here, who is one of my favorite photographers.
Yeah. The thing I liked about what I was happy, particularly with this drawing when I did, was on if you're looking at it straight on the left side of the face, not where his hand is, but the opposite side, just the line of light that runs down the side of his face, that sort of makes it separate from the rest of, I always go to that. I like it. And again, the hands are important.
Exactly.
If the hands don't work, that one's got hands and eyes. So that was a pretty tricky one to draw, but I think it came out pretty good.
I'm going to go through some of these others fairly quickly here. Chris Haddock.
Chris Haddock is a local producer, writer who's quite well known in Vancouver, and that photo I just came across in like a local trade magazine, and I thought, oh, this is a cool picture, Chris. And I'd worked on a show that Chris had created and years ago, and then one day, recently, like within the last year, I bumped into Chris. He was sitting in Vancouver having a coffee outside of a place with another actor friend of mine, Stevie Miller. And I said, oh, by the way, get this. I did a drawing of you once. He's like, no way. And I said, yeah. And I went into my phone and I stood there for a sec scrolling, and I found it. And I showed him the picture. And I said, I just did this drawing of you because I thought it was interesting. And he was like, wow, that really is me. And then I ended up sending him a copy of it.
There you go. I first thought it was Vincent Schiavelli when I first looked. I was like, that looks familiar. He's like, no, Chris Haddock.
No, Chris Haddock says he's quite the iconic guy around it. I wouldn't mind talking about some of my paintings because if you have any of the
I
other
do.
paintings there.
Before I move to that page, I would like to bring up your production of Mice and Men. So
Oh yeah,
you did you had a design for cover art.
right. That's a poster.
Yes.
That's poster art. So in that, the guy that I did all the art with, that I told you that I've been doing art with for 6 years, we've gone on to do. He works in leather now. He makes wallets and bags, and he's really good at that. He's amazing, and I know that if anybody was ever interested in what he did, I could get those pictures to you because he's so good. But also. It got to the point where after a while he would come over, I'd be drawing and he'd be on his iPad because he was taking a computer graphics course up at the local university just to kind of broaden his skill set. And so one day I said to him, hey, I'm directing this version of Mice and Men with my girlfriend's son in it, Elliot, who is 6'3", and he's going to play the part of Lenny. And he's a guy with physical and mental disabilities, but he also acts. Yeah. And so the guy that played George was Elliot's best friend. So the two of them were Lenny and George in this production of Mice and Men. And I got to direct a guy with disabilities to play a character with disabilities. It was like the most astonishing, fantastic experience. Anyway. That was something else. But anyway, I said, because it's a theater thing, it's like low budget. And I said, well, I've worked in design before. I'll design the poster. So I went to my friend Dana and I said, look, I got to design a poster for this thing. And I have an idea of what I want what I want it to look like. And I roughed it out. And I said to Dana, as far as the graphic of what's going to represent the play, because I'd done a bunch of research on past productions of Mice and Men, and a lot of them showed the two guys together, Lenny and George together, and maybe something with rabbits or whatever. But I said, what I haven't seen is the rabbit as a gun. I said, could you create a rabbit as a gun, turn it into, and could you mash them up? And so that's what Dana came up with, was this graphic, this visual representation. And I was over the moon. I just thought, oh my God, I've never seen this before. It's such a cool poster. And if you squint, the rabbit is the stock of the handle, and got the gun, and the hands are the trigger, and the ears are, the
pen.
Yeah. So I was really happy with that. So I just drew upon my own past experience working in advertising as a graphic designer to come up with that. So
Let's look at a couple more of the paintings. Your stepdaughter on Promise.
Yeah.
I love the color in this.
Thank you. That horse that pony, that was a pony, and it had kind of like a reddish brown coat. And by that time that pony had moved away from where we lived, and so it was like about an hour and a half drive away from us, because we just couldn't have, Lily was like growing up, she was going to school, she wasn't going to ride anymore. So, but I would take her up there to visit Promise, and then she would, because Promise was injured. Aww. And she couldn't do any of the things that she did. She couldn't ride him the way she could, so he was basically put out to pasture. And sadly, I heard that Promise up at that place jumped a fence, ran into the road, and got killed by a truck. Got hit by a truck and killed. And so I painted that as kind of like a
absolutely
homage to her and Promise. And that was really my first painting. That was my first painting.
That's crazy, man. Your
And I
first go
remember
at something.
a buddy of mine who was like, who's an incredible artist. Um, I sent him a couple of like, stages of as I was working on it. I emailed them to him, and he said, "Why, for your first painting, are you painting a horse?" And I was, and again, it's just one of those things that I kind of knew. I just knew I could do it. I don't know what else to say beyond that. Much the same way that if you put a pencil in my hand, I kind of know that I can draw. I've always known this. And he said, "Why don't you just paint an onion?" And I was like, "An onion?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, most people starting out painting, they'll
Start
paint
small.
like an apple or something." And I was like, "No, because I know I can draw this horse."
There you go.
Horse. So I was really proud of that as my first go around.
And your son and his grandfather.
Yeah. So my dad, who's been dead about 15 years now, that was, no, it's got to be longer than that because my son is 20. So my son's got to be about 2 there in that picture. And so it was probably about 18 years ago that that my dad and my mom flew out to Vancouver to visit. And so my son would sit on the back of that couch a lot of just on his own anyway, but my dad happened to be sitting in front of that painting, sitting on that couch, and the covering of that couch is velvet. And when I showed the painting to my son, he said, "Oh my God," he said, "Dad, I remember what it was like running my hand on that velvet."
Correct.
Because he goes, because if you run it the opposite way, it looks white. It captures the light. The light kind of changes color. And he said, "I'm looking at this painting and it takes me right back to that."
You can feel it.
So he could feel it. He could feel it when he looked at the painting. And I thought, "Oh my God, that's so cool that my
it translates.
Took him back to an actual tactile experience." And I'll say very quickly about that the painting that's hanging in the background, the white dress.
Yes.
Is a painting done by a friend of mine who lives in Vancouver now, that when she was in art school, probably 25, 30 years ago, I bought that painting from her.
Wow.
And I was like, when was I ever in a position to buy art as a starving artist myself? But I was so taken by that giant painting that I bought it from her. And years later, find myself doing a painting
of the painting
where I have to paint her painting
in the shot.
The shot. And I was like, I have to get this right because
it means something to you.
It means something to me. And when I sent it to my friend and I said, "Check out what I painted," she was just blown away. She couldn't believe that her painting had been painted.
Because it was in a shot.
Absolutely. It was in a shot. That's pretty cool.
Before we get to your commission, the last one I have is of him in Tombstone.
Oh my God. This is one of my all-time favorite shots that I took of my kid. He's about 13. Took him down to Tucson, Arizona, to visit a buddy of mine and his son. So that the 4 of us hung out together. And my friend Alex said, let's go to Tombstone, and we'll kind of hang out in this old cowboy town, and we'll watch like the recreation of the OK Corral and all that kind of stuff. And Oscar was just at the age where he wasn't too cool for school, and he and this other kid, when they got there, they said, "Oh, can you buy us some like plastic 6 guns?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." And they just like
went to town,
like little cap guns, and they were like shooting at each other and chasing each other around. And it was like, things would change after that. My son would grow up and everything.
Right.
So I caught him. So that photograph, I just caught my son in a moment where not only is he firing a 6 gun, but he's on this horse, like pretending he's escaping from a bank robbery, and he's shooting over his shoulder. and look at him. He's got aviator shades on.
Yeah.
And he's got a trucker's hat that says "loser." And I just love everything about that like I actually painted my son. Like, and
Uh-huh.
it
You
looks
captured a
exactly.
moment of him in time.
And there's a couple of spots on that painting that I absolutely love. One is where his leg is slightly bent
Mm-hmm.
into the stirrup. So I got that right, like which is like the shape and the angle of his leg is really important for me. And the other one is the arm that goes across like this is kind of white, and it sort of bursts into the gun. You know, like the gun becomes white. And there was something, and that was the intensity of the sunlight. The sunlight in Tombstone on that day was just
Mm-hmm.
it was just baking hot.
Yeah, welcome to my
So
state.
yeah, so when you go like that with his gun, and I was really happy. And my son even said he really loved the way the arm looks with the white on it. So
And he paints as well. We had one of his paintings on last time you were on the show.
he paints as well too. Yeah.
But the last time you were on the show, some fans reached out to me and said we'd like Gary to consider doing some work for us. And you did a commission,
Yeah.
the first stage of which I have here on the screen. It's a gentleman from Texas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was an initial drawing, and his face is in the lower left corner. You can see, folks.
Right. So what happened was I had two people contact me and asked me if I would do some paintings for them, and those didn't pan out. I said, yeah, I'll do them. And then eventually they said, oh yeah, we can't, we can't afford to do it. And, but eventually they just disappeared.
Right.
And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. No worries. And then out of the blue, this young lady contacted me on Twitter. She sent me a direct message, and she said, I hear that you're accepting commissions. And I was like, okay, sure. I had no expectations, really low expectations. And she said, well, I would love to do a painting. I would love you to paint a portrait of my father-in-law. And his name is Ihor, Ihor. And I think he's Ukrainian. I think that's a Ukrainian name, something like that. And so I said, okay, sure. And so then I just basically said to her, okay, if this is going to happen, I'm not going to get messed around. I'm happy to do it, but you send me, half the deposit, and as soon as that's in my bank, I'll get to work. And so she was like, okay. It was like, okay, great. And I just had such a lovely relationship with this young girl, as I would send her segments of the sketches. And I guess whatever you have up on there right now is just like the picture of him down in the corner, and then me drawing grids, grid system on the canvas, so that I could get his face in the perfect proportion and make sure that it actually looked like him as a pencil sketch before I began painting him, because I thought you can't just start painting. You have to do the sketch first, and you have to go, okay, proportionally erasing, move the eye, shift this, shift that. And then once you have it as a line drawing, it doesn't have to be all super shaded in, but at least as almost like a schematic, like a line drawing. And once I was happy with that, then I began painting. And of course, because it was my first commission, and I was a bit afraid of, I was going, oh my God, I hope to God this turns out. And so I started painting like the jacket and the tie, and I was kind of working my way, and then I'll paint the shirt. And I was like, anything to avoid painting the face. Then I painted some background. Then I started on his hair. Oh my God. Seriously, I was like, anything to avoid
those eyes,
having to make him look like who he looked like, right? And I'll tell you a funny story, just to go back, when you showed that picture of Lily on Promise.
Yes.
If you'd seen me paint that, I painted everything I could except Lily's face.
Right.
Like I painted her hair. Her face was like a blank egg. I basically, concentrated it down to that until I finally got to the point where I went, okay,
got no choice now.
I got to paint her face, because I've left it to last. But what was great was that by the time I got there, I had gained enough confidence in the painting, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be pretty good. I just got to make sure it looks like her, and I just got to figure it out how to do it. And it looks exactly like her. It really does. I mean, you don't know what she looks like, but trust me, it looks like that.
But
So
we're looking at this guy here, and I mean, you've captured him. You've got him spot on.
Well, that was the thing. If you notice, okay, let me ask you a question, David.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think by looking at that portrait? What do you think was the one thing that I found really interesting in that photo? That I thought, oh, this will be kind of cool. What do you think is the one little bit that I thought was super interesting?
I mean, from a design aesthetic, if I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking about creating something like this, the glasses do an interesting thing on his eyes.
That's it.
That's it?
That's what got me.
Yeah, because it's a distortion. So can you copy the distortion?
It's a lens distortion.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at it, if you sort of ignore the lens distortion, he just looks normal. He looks like his eyes just look normal, but they are distorted. That white bit, I was like, I couldn't take my eyes off that. And as soon as I saw that, and people would say to me, well, you're not going to draw that in, are you? And I was like, are you kidding?
You have to.
I can't wait to get to that bit.
Yeah.
That's the bit I want to paint because it just fascinated me how the lens changed, sort of like changed the side of his face. And I was loving doing that. So that brought me into it, and I kept looking at that. And then it was a matter of just taking my time with it, because if you get really up close to that shot, I had like the thinnest paintbrush and just like did the tiniest white brush strokes to get his hair right. And then if you pull back and you look at the photograph of him, he's got a kind of a mixture of darker hair and white hair on his chin, and you got to get that right. So it's not just like a white beard. There's a real kind of palette to it, and it's all mixed up, and I got to get that. I couldn't just do a white beard because it just wouldn't look like him,
Right. Yeah, it has to be right.
Yeah, and I just had to. I had to be kind of a bit aggressive with it in my brush strokes, and I was really happy with the way it turned out.
You did great work, man.
Thank you.
If anyone is interested in reaching out to Gary for a potential commission, it's actor Gary Jones 83 at gmail.com.
Yeah.
And I have put that information into the chat, so people will find it available there, and I will also put it in the show notes as well once this is all up and running. So
thanks so much.
Thank you. This is so cool. Thank you so much for taking me through this stuff. I think there's so much more to be found in an actor's performance that informs their performance than just the role itself, their entire creative body. And to be able to share that with you, some really intimate moments in your life, with your kid, and those legs, man, creates such a visual array of something spectacular. It's really special. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, I think basically in looking back, what I realized I've done for many years without really thinking about it so much is chosen a creative life.
Yeah.
Really what I've done. So to become an actor and then move into writing and then improvising and then playwriting and then script writing and then photography and painting, it's entirely creative. And working in advertising and design, it's creative. So my life is really, that's the life I've chosen. And whether or not it necessarily always comes with a big paycheck, it's not how it works,
Yeah, fulfillment is important,
Oh, this is who I am. This is what people know me as, and it's really great to chat with you, David. You're always just an awesome guy to talk with on Zoom and just hang out with. We always have a great time together, you and I. But what a brilliant opportunity for me to be able to, because I never talk like this. Like the fact that you've actually asked me questions about some of these paintings and that I can tell you what's behind them or whatever, I never get to do that. So this has been really kind of amazing for me. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing.
Anytime, man.
I have some fan questions for you.
Oh,
Is it okay?
yeah.
Teresa MC and Kicks 394. Were there any mishaps? Dan 23 and Teresa MC. Were there any mishaps with control room equipment over the years, or incidents you had with technology, computers, doors, things like that?
One time I was standing in the hallway where, like outside the SGC.
Yeah.
And I reached up, I was leaning against the wall, and I just pulled off a huge bolt.
Yes, the bolts, they were glued on.
Yeah. Well, it was like styrofoam.
Yes.
And the bolt just came off in my hand. And I said, "Oh, sorry, I pulled a styrofoam bolt off the wall." And they just went, "Oh, you idiot." And they just glue gunned it back on.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, "Oh my God, of course." Chris Judge once, I'm pretty sure it was Chris. Pretty sure. He changed all the letters on my keyboard to something super disgusting. And I had to sit at the, so that there was that.
Pop them off. Yeah, there's a tool for it.
He popped them off, and then he rearranged them, and he wrote out a disgusting message on my keyboard.
Radev, would you ever paint the Stargate? That's an interesting idea. Would you ever paint the Stargate?
Would I ever paint it?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. To be honest, I think I talked to you about this earlier, Dave, at some point, was that I don't think, you mean, she's asking me as Walter?
No, would you ever, or did you ever paint the Stargate, Radev?
Paint, you mean paint as in do a painting of it?
Do a painting of the gate.
Oh, yeah, of course I would.
Yeah.
I would do a painting of the gate. Yeah. Sorry. I thought you meant, would Walter just decide to paint the gate?
I don't think Walter, that's in his wheelhouse. He's more of a tech head. He's a gearhead.
Yeah. He's like, you know what? We need to liven this gate room up. Why don't we just do a nice robin's egg blue? You know what I mean?
I'm staring at it day in and day out.
Would I paint the Stargate? Yeah, that would be. I've never done that before. That would be a cool challenge to paint a Stargate for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coklud, you basically answered this, but he was asking if it was different working on Atlantis compared to SG-1, because you had the same set.
Same set? No, they were in two different sound stages.
Right. No, you were on the same set when Atlantis would come to you.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were at the SGC.
The only difference was I didn't really know those guys that well.
Right.
They were all nice people. Kind of got to know Tori a bit more, and she was really fun to hang out with. You know what? They were all nice. They were all nice. I just didn't know them that well because I didn't see them, as much as I did the SG-1 cast. But even everybody else was the same. The cast, the crew were interchangeable. So,
right. Yeah, they would go from one to the other.
Yeah.
Peace Rider wanted to know the sketch that you did of Rick's dog Andy. Did Rick ever get to see it?
Yes, I showed it to him. I sent it to him, and he just loved it. He loved it. He thought it was great.
You really captured that dog. That was an impressive drawing. I was really impressed, man, of all these that we went through. That was one of the ones that was like, wow, that dog's eyes. There is life in that 2D image. Man.
Yeah. No, I was really happy with that. I haven't drawn any other animals since. I haven't drawn anything. That's the one and only dog that I've ever drawn. I was really happy with it. Rick was too. He thought it was great.
What did you Redux? What did you think of your puppet form in 200? Wasn't that crazy?
Hilarious. When I only saw it when I saw the show, because the puppets were all done down in LA by the Team America people. Mm-hmm. And when we acted, they shot us in the SGC doing our scenes.
Right.
And then they just sent the footage down and replaced us with the puppets.
Yeah, they shot reference shots of you and then a clean plate of the backgrounds and then composed them later on.
Yeah.
It's just crazy, man. So you never got to see your puppet in person?
No. And everybody asked me that. That's one question that all the fans ask me. Do you still have your puppet? I go, I
think MGM's got them.
They've got them. They're not going to go,
get sold.
Here's a puppet that cost like $1 trillion.
They were very expensive.
Yeah, of
So
course.
just great. The electronics in them and everything was just so perfect. But
Yeah, no. And so uh, hilariously written. Like make it
yeah,
spin, and I feel so
I feel
stupid, and
so
all.
stupid.
Yeah, it should spin. It should spin. Make
It's
it
round. It
spin.
has to spin. Don, God bless him for sure.
Yeah.
Miller's Crossing and Jason Momoa, Teresa MC. We asked that. Dan 23. Was there anything you liked filming for a Stargate DVD extra? You did the 200th episode promotion with Sci-Fi
Oh, down in San Diego.
in Vancouver. You did the 200th episode Sci-Fi Channel promotion. You're trying to get the running gag is you're trying to get yourself in the 200th episode.
Trying to get myself into the 200 and going to Beau Bridges,
Right.
asking him if he can get me on. I'm trying to bribe him. I think it was like I said something like I'll pay you 1,000, like what was it, like 2,000 large? No, I said yeah 2,000 large, and he's like 2,000 American. I go, no, 2,000 Canadian, kind of thing. It was
That's
some
right.
joke about like the fact that the money was Canadian,
Conversion.
meant it was large. That was really fun. But I'll tell you what, on the season 10 box set, I one of the DVD extras on there is me down in San Diego, emceeing a
Yes.
Q&A with they just put that on. I didn't even know. Somebody told me at a convention. They go, "Oh my God, you were so funny in that." I was like, "Well, how did you see? Were you there?" And they were like, "No, it's in the
It's
DVD
a
extras."
extra.
Like,
Yeah, you
so I didn't
hosted
get,
the SG1 panel.
yeah, I didn't get paid for that. It's not. But hang on. What they did was they flew me down. I took my wife at the time. We got put up in this fantastic hotel. Everywhere we went was limos. Everything was like totally. It was great. It was a
production.
fantastic, full on paid for the
Vacation.
holiday.
Wow.
The vacation.
Not bad for a hosting gig.
Well, what was funny was that the reason I got that hosting gig was because they were promoting it up in Vancouver, and it was like they had asked me, could I? They were going to have Brad and all the actors up at in the gate room, with about 10 reporters sitting there asking questions, and could I moderate that? And I was like, oh yeah, and I put my flight suit on and and they asked me to, right? And I said sure, and so I put that on, and so I just fielded questions and was like a little bit funny or whatever. Next thing I know, they're flying down to San Diego to Comic-Con to do the same thing, and I get a question. I get called and they say, would you go down to San Diego to do a Q&A with the cast and do the same thing? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. So on the way down, flying down, I'm talking to Joe Malazzi, and Joe goes, so are you nervous? Are you nervous about doing this? And I was like, nervous? Why would I be nervous? It's just going to be like a couple of reporters there. And he goes, oh, no, this is in front of 4,000 people. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, that's what it's going to be. They just want you to MC at a podium, and it's one of those things where they pull the big wall aside and they make this ginormous room, and it is packed with 4,000 people. And I guess anybody else might have been like, oh my God, and I was like, oh, bring it on.
Absolutely.
So I think that translated when I moderated that cast Q&A. And just had a total blast with it. Went out and was funny and took questions from the crowd and just hacked on them and made it really fun. And I think they just went, oh my God, let's put this on the DVD. So it's on the DVD extra, which I'm really proud of.
That's great, man. Gary, it's always awesome to have you on. I appreciate you answering the fan questions and taking us through your art and just a cross section of your life at this moment in time. It's really special. So it means a lot that you've joined us.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It's always great chatting with you. I want to mention too that very briefly, like the people can contact me through, if they want to get me through Twitter, because that other lady she did DM me through Twitter. So it's like at the Gary Jones. They'll know it's, you can.
Perfect.
I think there's a banana sticking in a hole, or so. There's my profile is sticking in a sink. You know what it was? It was my mom would buy me things for the kitchen all the time. She'd go, "Have you got one of these?" I'd be like, "Mom, I don't use stuff like that." She's like, "Oh, you got the latest thing." And she bought me one of those little sink catchers, those little drain catchers. Yeah. And so I put a banana on top of it. I took a photo of it and I sent it to my mom. I said, "Mom, this thing works like a charm. Look how it caught this banana before it went down into the plumbing of my sink." And she's like, "Oh, you're so bad." Anyway, but at the Gary Jones.
At the Gary Jones.
At the Gary Jones
All
is
right.
the one. And they can DM me there, or they can contact me through Gmail.
Actor Gary Jones 83 at Gmail.
Yeah.
Perfect, sir. Well, means a lot to have you.
Oh, my Instagram is Gary Jones 680.
680. Gary Jones 680. All right.
Yeah, so that there's no excuse for people not contacting me and asking for commissions. Thanks a lot, David.
You take care of yourself, man.
Always a pleasure. We'll talk soon, okay?
I appreciate you. I'll be in touch with you, all right?
Cheers, man.
You be safe. Bye-bye now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Gary Jones, Walter Harriman, Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, and Stargate Universe Air. He was in the pilot episode. I have a few fan questions before we go in and bring Sharon Taylor in. During the 12 Things We Want on Stargate event, Raj Luthra asked, was it mentioned why the Ancients and Atlanteans chose the Pegasus Galaxy and not the Andromeda Galaxy? It was not mentioned. I don't know, has Andromeda ever been used in science fiction? Other than the name for the ship? In Andromeda? I'm not sure. But yeah, the Andromeda Galaxy is a possibility. I think some fan fiction has covered it at some point, but no, there's never been a proper explanation in the show. Kix 394, do you alternate live interviews on one Sunday and a pre-recorded interviews the next, or does it depend on everybody's schedules? So what I try to do is have one Sunday designated every month as a pre-recorded. I'm getting ready to move. Announcement. So I'm going to be taking the show into hiatus in terms of live shows pretty soon here. So I am banking some content for the next few weeks, and then we're going to go into a different form of content, which I will reveal soon in due course. Teresa MC, are you planning to travel to the sci-fi cons, and do you do live interviews with them? Yes. So once it no longer costs $2 or $3 grand to go up to Canada and do a lot of those events up there, I want to do that. I want to do some location shows as well, where we go to some of the hot spots and where it's, there's significance to the Stargate story, and tell some tales there. Redux Q, come try it. Any chance of having Jay Hall, Todd Ray, Dan Castellaneta, Anna Grauer, Marina Baccarin, editors, some more SGU cast and captains of the spaceship, the actor who played Janice? All of these are on the table. I've reached out to Marina Baccarin's management, have not heard back. Anna Grauer has passed for the time being. I'm hoping that she'll come back around when she's less busy. A lot of the SGU cast have declined, unfortunately. But you can't get everybody, so we're doing what we can with what we got. So that's what we have right now. Before I let you guys go, I did have fan art, as if we haven't had enough art today, but I did want to bring this in because I thought it was just way too cool here. Let me share this. Nebulon is providing the artwork for today, on both this interview and the Sharon Taylor interview. This is Gary Jones as Walter's family. He said, "I think it would be cute if Walter had a family." So these little notes here. Daddy's home. In his flight suit. My name is David Reed. I really appreciate you tuning in to Dial the Gate. It means a lot to have you here. We are going to be doing another episode here in just a moment. Thanks to my production assistants, Jennifer Kirby and Linda Gate Gabber Fury. My moderating team, Summer, Tracy, Keith, Jeremy, Reese, Anthony. You guys make the show possible, continue to be possible. So it means a lot to have you as part of it. And it means a lot to have you joining us live pretty much every weekend. I'm going to get ready for Sharon Taylor here. We're going to talk about going from technicians in the Milky Way galaxy to technicians in the Pegasus galaxy. And she's going to be up next. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the other side.